Tonight's event's a slightly different format. We've got, in your program, you can see, we've got a number of great speakers. We've got Natalie Rudolph and Giacomo Bassadono, who both will give a brief overview to help us understand, as I told them, if you give me a G and an R, maybe I can spell grant. So we're starting from that level where I don't know anything about it, and there might be some others of you who don't know anything about grant funding and writing, to others of you that might have more experience. So they'll give us an overview of that. Then we've got 4 mentors who will be set up around the room, and they'll give a quick 1-minute overview of their background, what their experience is with grants, whether they've written 50 grants and been awarded grants, whether they review grants and approve them. Whatever their responsibility is, they'll talk about that. And then we'll set a session of about 10 minutes where we'll go through and you'll sit at a table, listen to, it could be 1 or 2 of you with an individual mentor. You'll talk to them, understand what their suggestions are about grants, what advice they have, and then every 10 minutes we'll move you to a different table so you get to talk to all 6 of the experts. Let's see what else we've got. Then we'll have a break. After the first 3 of those sessions, we'll take a quick break to do a little networking, and then we'll finish up with the last 3 10-minute sessions. So hopefully, with a group this small, I think we should be able to get everybody in and out, and it might be a little earlier at night than we usually have. And as far as announcements, there's, I want to just let you know about some other groups that have activities going on. One is Group Venture Meets. The Venture Forum did an event with them back in February. It was great. We had excellent attendance, and some might argue that there was alcohol involved, which drove that attendance, but they have their events at the Compass Tavern in Worcester, and that will be on Thursday night. So you can go to our website, you can go to Venture Meets and sign up, or just show up at the Compass Tavern at 6 o'clock. Second thing is the Venture Forum is partnered with the Chamber of Commerce as part of Startup Worcester. And for those who don't know, Startup Worcester is an initiative to try to keep local students, give them an opportunity to create their companies and stay in Worcester. And they're looking for companies to apply, so if you know any students or people who have recently graduated, I guess that's also open. If you've got Mitch, you don't qualify as a recent graduate, so you can't apply. But anybody that's recently graduated or a student can apply to the Chamber of Commerce and get free membership, get space in an incubator, get a year's membership with the Venture Forum to help them get their business going. And if you have anybody here who wants to find out, in the back is Karen Pelletier from the Chamber of Commerce, and you can ask her for more information. And then the last thing I have to say before I introduce our speaker or speakers is a month from now in this room, the Venture Forum has their annual 5-minute pitch. For those who haven't attended, you've got 10 companies who are presenting their ideas with some great judges from different angel and VC groups. That's here. Typically, we've gotten somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 people at that event, so I'd suggest that you register soon. Make sure you get a space to attend. But it's always exciting. We've got some great alumni who have been part of that contest and have won and have gone on to get some great funding and make some great connections. So it's a good opportunity to see a number of companies in one place in a very quick succession as they run through their pitches. So with that, I would like to go through. I will let you read the full bio of the folks, but I want to just go through and announce our first speaker is Dr. Natalie Rudolph. She's the principal of Rudolph Biomedical Consulting. She's got 24 years of experience in the biotech and biomedical industries, extensive experience in issuing, helping, and writing grant funding. And Natalie, would like to thank you for coming to help and talk here. And I'd like to turn the mic over to you.
Great. Thank you. In the next few minutes, I want to introduce you to the concept of grant funding for small companies, particularly the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Program, which is a program of the federal government. But first, I want to ask just how many of you are familiar with this program. So maybe everybody stand up if you've heard of this grant program. You know what SBIR grants are all about? Stand up, stand up. Up. Okay, good. Remain standing if you've ever seen a grant application. Remain standing if you've ever written or submitted a grant application. Remain standing if you've ever won an SBIR grant. All right, so we have a few of you who have been through the process. Thank you very much. So I'll try to speak to all of you who are here to give you some basics in just a few minutes, but also to speak to those of you who have some experience. Basically, the U.S. government invests in technology development, particularly in small companies, since that's where a lot of innovation comes from. And the government is willing to invest particularly in technology development that's going to lead to a commercial product or service. And that's this SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Program. The sister program to it, STTR, is Small Business Technology Transfer Research. They are very similar. There are some differences, but I'm going to speak about, mostly I'm going to use the word SBIR, and for the most part, what I'm going to say applies to both programs. If there are differences, I'll tell you about them. So this is a really good deal for a small company. Those of you who have received them know it's a shot of cash, up to $1.2, $1.3 million, sometimes much more, over 2 phases of funding. And it will allow you, it will give you money to spend on things that you may not have enough cash to spend on. It'll help you fund collaborations. It'll help you hire consultants. It'll help you do the experiments you need to do, some animal studies perhaps that you don't have the cash to do. It allows you to leverage your resources and capabilities and expand them. And it's also important because it gives you recognition and validation, because you go through a very rigorous vetting process through the peer review process. If you get one of these grants, it's really, companies send out press releases when they get these grants. It's really an accomplishment. And it's a way of vetting your science, vetting your resources, and showing your initial investors perhaps that you really have some good technology and some business experience. As I mentioned, there's 2 flavors, SBIR and STTR. So SBIR is for small companies with a small amount of cash and effort that can go outside for collaborations and consultants. STTR is a grant for a collaboration specifically between a small company and a nonprofit research organization such as a university. The grant, though, always goes to the company. There are basically 2 funding phases. The first is a feasibility stage for 6 months or 12 months, depending on the flavor. It's about $150,000. Depending on the agency, there's some flexibility about that. And that's to demonstrate, to overcome some particular technology challenge and demonstrate that your technology basically is going to work for the purpose for which you're developing it. But everybody wants really the phase 2 grant, which is about $1 million more or less for 2 years. And that's where you get much more further down the road in developing and demonstrating that your technology can work. I just want to say also that talking about grants is by definition a detailed conversation. And so if you want copies of these slides, my email address is at the end. Email me and I'll send them to you. They've got some links to resources, so don't worry about scribbling things down. If you're really interested, I'd be happy to send you the details. Basically, there are 11 federal agencies that fund these programs. The largest one is the Department of Defense, which works by contracts. And the second one is NIH, which works by grants. Very briefly, the difference is that with the Department of Defense, every funding cycle, and they have 3 a year, the Department of Defense lists projects for which they want technology development. It's a procurement mechanism. They have a problem, they know what they want the solution to look like, and they invite companies to come in and solve the problem for them. So they define the project, they define the deliverables. And every deadline, if you're interested, you need to go out and look at the solicitations and read the list of topics and see whether there's something that matches what you happen to be doing. There is a fair amount of biomedical in the DoD, but you have to know, you have to look for them. On the other hand, the NIH program is mostly grants. They're investigator initiated. They will fund almost anything that's within the mission of National Institutes of Health, which is to improve health and cure disease. The NIH usually has 3 deadlines a year, but they're in the process of making some significant changes. This year, 2015, there's only 2 deadlines, but back in 2016, they'll go back to the 3 deadlines a year, but they're going to change slightly. The thing to know, though, is that the eligibility requirements for SBIR, STTR, the S is really important. S is small, and that means 500 or less, 500 or fewer employees. There are also other requirements, such as it needs to be majority owned by individuals, for the most part, and not other corporations. The company must be organized and operating here in the United States. This is actually quite new. NIH now allows some SBIR funding for companies that are majority venture capital owned. It's a fairly new program. It's only the SBIR, it's not STTR. As far as I know, it's only NIH, although the other agencies are probably going to roll that out in the near future as well. And the other thing to know is that this program really does not fund virtual companies. It was it started in more than 30 years ago to create jobs, actually, and increase competitiveness. And so they really want to see small companies with bricks and mortar. So if you're a virtual company, you're going to need to find a laboratory, a place. There has to be a there, and there's some details around that. Although it makes a lot of sense business-wise for many companies to operate in virtual mode, you can't get SBIR, STTR funding if you do. So there's some things you need to think about how to make that work. And that means that most of the work needs to be done by the company. It can't be all outsourced. And the company has to have its own facilities at the time of the award and enough resources to complete the work that you're proposing to do. I want to talk, though, more about how to use these grants strategically. And so there's 2 aspects I want to talk about. One is figuring out if you've got a project that you want to do, is it really an SBIR project? And so 3 categories I'd like to talk about. Gee whiz. Okay. Is it innovative? The I in SBIR is innovation. And innovativeness, novelty is a very, very important criterion. And so it's not just a difference that makes a difference. Something that's really fundamental, that will create a new business model, that'll create new opportunities, that can be a platform technology, a significant innovation. A second criterion is what I call who cares? Significance. It has to solve a real problem. Again, I work mostly with NIH and biomedical, a real critical unmet need in a field, an important innovation that nobody cares about, that isn't going to affect a lot of patients or customers or clients, is not going to get funded. Then you have to make the case for all of these in the application. And the other is what I call Field of Dreams. Remember that movie from the 1980s, Build It and They Will Come? Okay. That may work for movies. Anybody old enough to remember that movie? But it doesn't work for grants. In other words, you need to not just have a nice technology and not just show that you're meeting a critical unmet need, but demonstrate that your company has the ability to take it to market. That you've got the business acumen, that you understand that there's a business there, that there's customer base there, and you have the experience or know where to get the experience to take it to market. The other aspect is this the right project for your company? Is it a good match with your company strategy and timeline? Does this project make sense, or would it be defocusing for you, especially if you're a startup and you're very small with limited resources? Do you have the capabilities? Do you have a credible principal investigator? Do you have the facilities and resources? Do you have the time to prepare a competitive proposal? I'm actually dealing with that, addressing that with a client right now who's busy with other things. Very important things for the company, but writing a proposal takes time. And if you don't have the time, you're not going to write a good proposal. And you need to look to see whether the grant budget will actually fund the work you want to do, and if not, where's the rest of the money going to come from? And make sure you have some intellectual property base. Do you have a patent status? Do you have your patent protected? Do you have freedom to operate? So these are sort of the big questions to start thinking about before you even start writing, of course. People ask me a lot, where do I start? Where do I start? They get the application, they start filling out the forms. That's not the place to start. You'll see on my list, that's about the last thing you do. First, you make the business case. You go through those other questions. You take a look to define your critical unmet need, the market. Make sure you have a feasible approach. Make sure it's a good match for your company. Download the application forms and the instructions. Each agency that has these grants has their own website. There's a series of electronic registrations that have to be completed, and that has to be done before the grant gets submitted. You need to allow 6 to 8 weeks. And again, I'm dealing with this now. I dealt with this about a year ago. Literally it does, you have to allow 6 to 8 weeks. It can take more. It's about 5 different registrations you have to complete. And I'll tell you, if they're not done, you may not submit the grant. You can't even push the button. I had a client about a year and a half ago. The whole grant was written. Everything was done. The forms were filled out. We had the letters. We had the budgets. But they didn't listen to me when I told them, really, guys, you got to do this ahead of time. And they didn't get the registrations completed on time. And the grant sat in the drawer for 4 months until the next deadline. So this is real. This happens. Take it seriously. Plan ahead. Next, you want to outline your research plan. Make sure it meets all the criteria. Make sure it meets the qualifications. It's advisable to talk to the program officer. There's some limitations from DOD. Build your team. Make sure you've got the resources, the people you need, the expertise. Then you start writing and putting together your supporting documents. But you have nothing to write if you don't have a story to tell. So developing the story, that's the first part. And complete and submit your electronic application, that's the last thing. Here's a list of these registrations that you need to go through. Again, I'll be happy to send you the links to these if you want the slides. But some of these are rate limiting steps. So you need to have your DUNS number, you need to register with SAM, which used to be CCR if any of you were government contractors from way back. You can't do anything else until you complete SAM, and that can take a couple of weeks. Then grants.gov takes a couple of weeks. All of these steps can take a couple of weeks. A few are faster. So do not wait to the last minute. The best advice I think I can give you is here. Make sure that your company is eligible for these grants. Make sure that the project that you're proposing really meets the criteria for whatever funding program you're going after. Make sure you have a competitive project. Has anybody else done it already? Who are your competitors and where are they in this process? Has the government agency funded this project already? There are ways to look that up, and that's important to find out. Great technology is necessary, but it is not sufficient. You have to make the business case also, even in phase 1. I already told you, start early, allow time for registration, but also in some of these grant submission portals, it takes a couple of days after you submit to complete the process. So plan to submit 2 to 3 days ahead. Notice I didn't say 15 minutes ahead. I had a client once who did that. Unbelievable that it went through, but most don't if you wait that late. 2 to 3 days really is good. Plan, plan, plan. It's all about the planning. You're not ready to start writing, as I said, until you know what you have to say. Write a specific work plan, and this is a challenge I have a lot, particularly, well, I guess it cuts across many different fields. These applications are very short. NIH, a phase 1 application, is only 6 pages. That's really not a lot of real estate to explain what you're going to do. Don't write a treatise about the theory of your technology. Tell the reviewers what you're going to do with the money once you get it. They're going to fund you to do some work. Tell them what work you're going to do. Divide it into tasks or specific aims. Tell them what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and how you'll know you have done it. What are your specific success metrics, preferably quantitative ones? What will success look like? What will happen if you don't meet those metrics? That all needs to go in the plan. And the last advice I can give you is follow the directions. The number one reason grants don't get funded is they did not follow the directions. You've got to follow the directions even to get the silly thing submitted. And a lot of people come to grief on that. But read the directions and follow them. Provide what they're looking for. And now there's some examples that have been published from the different agencies. Take a look at what they're saying and follow the directions. You can spend a lot of time Googling SBIR and coming up with a lot of data that's not necessarily information. Don't waste your time. The best site that I can recommend is the first one, zyn.com. Zyn.com. It is a portal to all of the agencies. It has all the information or links to all the information you'll need. All the deadlines, all the websites. That's the place to start. NIH has its own specific websites. The funding announcements, the current funding announcements, if you need to look them up, you can see are 171 and 071 and 072 for the two programs. And once you find the solicitations, and I can give you the links, you can get the instructions and the application packages. DOD has its own portal, which is actually easier than NIH's portal. And if you go to that, it's a little bit of a long website name, but there's links there to the deadlines and to the actual application portal. National Science Foundation has its own. If you want to contact me to get copies of these slides or answer some other simple questions, I'd be happy to do that. It's a whirlwind tour. I appreciate that. But I hope I've given you a little bit of insight into SBIR programs, and I hope I've intrigued you enough to want to try it on your own. Thank you.